Hello and welcome to this presentation on enhancing your note-taking skills. This presentation was brought to you by Western's Learning Development and Success team. Now before we jump into this presentation, I want to let you know about a few of the key services that your Learning Development and Success team has to support you on your academic journey. If you would like some help establishing your academic goals and to discuss strategies on how to achieve these goals, feel free to book an appointment with our team. Our counseling appointments are confidential, one-on-one, and designed to help you achieve academic success. Another key service is our PAL Center. So before paying for a tutor, be sure to check out our PAL Center through our website. The PAL Center offers free course-specific help to all Western and affiliate students. Our learning peers can help you to make sense of difficult course content and to help facilitate a deeper understanding of course material. Our learning peers are some of Western's brightest students who want to help you achieve success this year. Lastly, if you're a returning student and found that your last year was tough and want to do better, check out our Learn to Thrive program, which is an initiative aimed to help students thrive academically and personally. Join us for a holistic 10-week program and learn how to thrive. You can enroll in this program by visiting our website for more information. We also offer several key resources that students can access on demand on their own time. We offer a number of presentations to help students develop their learning and academic skills. You can watch these presentations through our website, but we will also offer several of these presentations virtually. In the past 5 years, we've had close to 9,000 students attend our presentations to learn more about time management, how to prepare for exams, and reduce test anxiety. But these are just a few topics you can watch. For a full listing, check out our website for more information. Also, if you're looking for some quick tips on key academic topics, see our handouts page on our website. Now, many students think that taking notes is a phenomenon that is unique to university, but in fact, many professions require that you take detailed and accurate notes. So learning to write good notes is not only a skill that can help you achieve better grades as a student, but is something that can help you with a future career. In this presentation, we will cover the following topics to help ensure you feel more confident in your note-taking practices. First, we will examine some of the common challenges and pitfalls that students experience while taking notes. We will then look at the importance of taking notes as it relates to your academic success, how to prepare yourself to take good notes, different formatting ideas for notes, and different note-taking styles. And lastly, we'll look at the importance of reviewing your notes after lecture. Effective note-taking involves being able to capture information, usually that we hear, or sometimes through other mediums, and then reforming it or recording it into shortened pieces of text. However, taking notes should be seen as much more than just attempting to record information to be studied later. Taking notes is an integral component of the learning process and is part of something called active listening, which, if effectively executed, means that you will gain much more from note-taking than simply capturing information to put it onto paper. So let's look at some of the common challenges that students can experience while attempting to take notes. The first is that they can lose their attention and focus. And this is true for both in-class lectures and even while watching a lecture online. Distractions are ever present and can impede our ability to correctly record information. Students also comment about having difficulty keeping pace with the lecture. Sometimes a lecture happens quite quickly or information is presented quickly, and students tend to feel that they can never get everything down. The next is depending on the lecture style. Sometimes professors follow a very linear way of lecturing, and other times they can jump across from one topic to the next. And of course, this can make it hard to have a consistent structure to your notes. And lastly, a lot of students mention that it's sometimes difficult for them to identify the crucial and important information that they should record in their notes. But let's also look at some of the common pitfalls that create unnecessary difficulties for students when attempting to take notes. Now, the first pitfall is when students try to write everything down. Now, by attempting to record every word, you won't benefit from the many advantages of proper note-taking. For example, you won't be as effective at remembering the course information in your notes because there will be just too much of it. And you will also have reduced comprehension at the time of listening to the lecture because all of your listening effort will go into copying down what the professor has said, rather than thinking, interpreting, and paying attention to the information that's most valuable. And unless you are well trained in shorthand, like a court transcriptionist, you physically won't be able to write everything down. It's near impossible. Now, the second pitfall is a lack of consistency in both to whether you take notes at all and how you take notes when you decide to. Taking notes only on occasion or just when you're feeling up to it will mean that you do not have a complete record of the course information, which will negatively impact your grades. Also, switching back and forth between different note-taking techniques will make it harder to organize and understand the information when returning to it later. And lastly, being inconsistent will prevent you from forming a solid habit of taking good notes. Now, it's okay to experiment with a few different note-taking techniques, as you may need to switch it up depending on the course, but it's important to remain consistent once you've established your note-taking technique. So why should you bother taking notes at all? You might have heard about that mythical student who hardly took any notes in class but still managed to get good grades. I don't advise taking that approach. Remember that note-taking is an important part of the learning process. In fact, a study from 2019 found that effective note-taking practices can improve student learning and can positively impact test performance. Taking notes helps to increase your level of engagement in what you are learning, as writing notes forces you to focus and pay attention to what your professor is teaching. Also, taking notes greatly improves the efficiency of your learning, as your notes will distill and reduce the volume of information to the most important points that you need to learn and remember. Now, lastly, and most importantly, taking notes provides you with a record of the information so that you can study when preparing for an exam. If you don't have notes on a particular lecture, for example, this can negatively impact your ability to perform your best. Now, keep in mind that in some classes, your professors will provide you with their PowerPoint slides. But remember that PowerPoint slides are often just an outline of points discussed and does not contain all the details you may need to know. Let's take a moment to discuss the importance of preparing yourself to take good notes. Many students think that a class does not begin until the professor starts lecturing, but this is simply not true. There's much to be done before attending your lecture that can help you to take better notes. Whatever the subject, the more preparation you do for your classes, the more you will get out of them. Having a good understanding beforehand of what is going to be taught will allow you to identify the most important aspects of the class. First, make sure that you do the required readings for the class. This is an essential step to taking great notes. Start with the material that is necessary or required. And keep in mind that your professors will not remind you to do your readings each week. It's your responsibility to pay close attention to the readings that correspond with the class topic each week. Be sure that you check your course outlines frequently. Another essential step for preparation is to understand the context of the class you are about to take. The better you understand the class information within the course and how it relates to other topics in the course will help you to establish connections between concepts, which is an important part of being engaged in the course material. Lastly, it is good practice to predetermine your overall purpose for note-taking during the class. Establish why you are taking notes in terms of the big picture and what you hope to get out of it by the end. At the beginning of the class, you should write down the main takeaway that you hope to achieve. Again, being informed about the lecture ahead of time will help you to determine what you hope to get out of the lecture in the first place. So you've prepared effectively for your lecture and are now feeling ready to take notes. Whether you're attending an in-person lecture or watching your lecture online, let's review some key strategies to help you take good notes. Remember when we talked about active listening? Well, one of the main reasons that note-taking is so important is that it helps you to listen actively. Active listening is important because it improves your ability to understand and remember information. Active listening occurs when you are fully engaged with the material and actively focusing on the main ideas that you are hearing. So note-taking will help to encourage more active listening and help you to engage more intellectually in what you're learning. It's also important to listen for opening statements and key words. Now, many professors will provide certain hints that what they're about to say or have just said is important. Some will do it deliberately, whereas others will not. There are a few key words and phrases that usually point to an important idea worthy of writing down. If you can learn to notice these key words and phrases, you will be able to improve or enhance your note-taking skills. Some phrases to listen for that your professors might say are things like to summarize or the most important, or 3 reasons why this is true are some key statements to listen for. Also, keep an eye on your professor. Sometimes your professor's nonverbal communication can indicate very important topics. Now, if you're sitting in lecture and you're not sure about a particular statement, write it down. One of the most common problems that students often encounter when note-taking is the inability to decide what is important and whether they need to take notes on the information or not. The rule of thumb is to write it down if you're not sure. Remember, it takes time to think about whether something is important or not. So just jot it down if you're unsure about its importance. At the end of the lecture, you can revisit the information and make a decision about the importance of the information. You might notice that in a course, when a lot of the learning is new, you may need to write down more of the information initially. But hopefully this will stabilize as you get into the course material and build your knowledge base. Let's take a look at some important formatting practices that can help you to navigate and study from your notes more easily. Keep in mind that your notes do not need to look like a masterpiece, but they do need to be organized and structured in a way that will make it easier for you to use them at a later time, say before an exam. It's critical to date and title all of your notes. Although this may seem intuitive, you might be surprised to learn how many students make this mistake. This should be the first thing you do when you begin note-taking. You should write down the course, the topic, and the prof's name. These are just small details, but they will greatly help to keep your notes chronologically organized, and this only takes a few minutes. It's equally important to have a good organization system for your notes. Being able to find what you want, what you need, will be invaluable when it comes to using your notes to study. Also, searching around for notes is a huge waste of time that you could be spending on other more important tasks. So if you're writing notes by hand, create a folder for each of your subjects. Then regularly empty these folders and place them into the relevant course binders. Ideally, this could also be a time when you look over your notes again, perhaps study them a little bit or test yourself. If you take notes on a laptop, ensure that you have a folder for each course and the material is organized by lecture each week. Don't forget to save your notes in the correct folder to help avoid the "where are my notes for that class" problem. The next is to use color, which is a great tool for creating notes. Using different colors can have the following benefits. It can help to identify different topics that you are learning in lecture. It can draw greater attention to important ideas. It can join important topics together. And it can also make memorization easier because colors create stronger memories. Think of traffic lights, for example. Different colors are used to identify important things that you must do. So think about this when taking notes. Now let's review some additional consideration when writing notes. Now, if possible, try to get an entire topic in a lecture on one page by using bullet points and lists to quickly summarize information as you record it. This will force you to use a single page to clearly outline a topic. The density of the information on the page will help you work with the ideas. Bullet points and lists are good and easy ways to get information recorded. Now, when it's not possible to get everything down on a single page, leave room for coordinating your notes with the readings after the lecture. Give things space, indent, and don't squash everything together. Although seemingly contrary to the advice above, avoid too much white paper or free space on the page. Try to fill in the paper without overloading it. Now, using abbreviations is also a really important element of good note-taking. Abbreviations can help you to take notes at a much higher speed. Now, if you don't know, abbreviations are simply words shortened down into just one or a few letters. Speed is an essential part of good note-taking, and being able to write down a letter or two instead of a whole word will help you to write notes much quicker. Of course, you need to remember what the letters stand for, so make sure that you have a common rubric to help you keep clear of what your helpful abbreviations are. Now, here is a list of some common abbreviations and notations that you can use as part of your lectures. Remember, it doesn't have to be official, and you can make up words that suit the material you are trying to learn. For certain courses, especially in the sciences, abbreviations will be helpful instead of continually writing down complicated scientific terminology. Keep in mind, however, that there will always be certain information in a course that you cannot use abbreviations for, such as a specific formula. But creating abbreviations is a flexible practice, so it's up to you on how you shorten something. Don't be afraid, though, to make them very short. For something like the Krebs cycle, you might just shorten it down to KC, or even just the letter K. I mentioned earlier that it was important to pay close attention to opening statements, as it can help to identify important information. Also, keep an ear out for transition statements, as it can help to identify important relationships between two ideas in the course. And lastly, keep an eye out for words that are absolute in nature. So words like always or best, fundamental are good indications of critical information to write down in your notes. When writing notes, as you've heard, it's important to not write everything down, but to focus on important information or main ideas. Now, here are some examples of main ideas or important information that you can hear in your courses. The first, of course, is important terms and definition. Now, if they're emphasized in the lecture, know their significance and write some detailed notes on these statements. Also, listen for academic arguments, arguments that attempt to explain or question an aspect of behavior. Also listen for theories and laws. Now, theories are generally accepted explanations of the world around us, and laws help to explain why things are the way they are. Next is to look out for relationships. So these are statements that highlight the similarities between concepts. So let's look at a simple example here. Now read the information presented above. This is something that you would likely hear in a lecture about human memory. So now that you've had a chance to read that statement, let's look at how you might take notes on this information. Notice here how the note is formatted. It contains several of the components we discussed earlier. It includes the important term, the main idea, some examples, and it uses an abbreviation. But you should notice that even though the note is condensed in nature, it maintains the integrity of the original information. Again, think of needing to study this information before an exam. The way the note is written and the examples provided can help you remember the original information. Let's take a look at the information presented in this slide and explore different note-taking styles that you could use to succinctly record the important ideas as it relates to information about ocean currents. So give this passage a read and let's explore together some different styles of recording important information. Now, there are many ways to take notes on this information, and here are a few popular styles of how students take notes in universities. Some have advantages and disadvantages over others, but let's take into consideration the text that we just read on the previous slide. Common note-taking styles in university are point form, structured point form, students use mind maps, the Cornell system, and the square method. Now, keeping in mind the ocean currents text you read earlier, here's an example of how a point form style of note-taking could be used. Now, point form note-taking is just writing each thought, fact, or idea on a separate line. Now, the advantage of point form note-taking is that it is typically more condensed than the original piece of text or information, and it does help you to get important information down. Now, the drawback of a point form style of note-taking is that it can be difficult to determine major or minor points of the lecture or reading, and you'll likely need to edit and structure this information to show relationships between topics at a later time. So you want to use point form styles of taking notes when there's a lot of lecture content or it's moving very quickly. And if you're unsure exactly the relationship of different topics to one another or how certain points fit together, point form note-taking is useful. Now, if you use this style of taking notes, you'll need to spend a decent amount of time after the lecture or reading to review and organize the information to help identify main ideas and important concepts. Now, taking things up a notch is this structured point form style of taking notes. You can see now that this style of taking notes has clearly delineated the two types of ocean currents. It's taken the 7 bullet points on the previous slide and organized them into 2 categories of information. Now, this makes it easier and quicker for your brain to understand the information if you have clearly labeled it and structured the information. Now, mind mapping is another excellent tool that can make your note-taking much easier and more effective. There are certain times when the mind map is the ideal tool. The strength of the mind map is its ability to expand outward in an unplanned and flexible manner. So if your professor likes to switch between different ideas in a spontaneous fashion, the mind map can be very helpful because you can easily return to previous topics and build upon them. Now, a mind map is simply a word or an idea written at the center of a page. From this, lines move outward, and on these lines or at the end of them are related ideas, words, or pictures. Now, sometimes from these lines, further branches can move outward. You can see that this is a very flexible way of taking notes. The Cornell method is probably the best known and most used note-taking strategy out there. It's a simple method that is characterized by how it divides a page of paper that you write your notes on. So to use this method, take a page of lined paper. Now, usually there'll be a margin on the left of the page. So from this margin, measure a few centimeters in and then draw a line down the page from top to the bottom. Next, draw a line across the bottom of the page. This will divide the page into 3 areas. So the section across the bottom, and now the extended margin on the left, and then the section to the right. The right of the page will be where you will make your normal notes. Now this area you will notice is reduced, but that encourages you to take fewer, more simplified notes as you have less space to do so. The section along the bottom of the page, area 3, is where you will write a summary of everything on the page. Now this will need to be no more than a couple sentences, and depending on how you prefer to work, this can be done right after class, maybe later in the evening, or say on the weekend. Now writing this summary will solidify your understanding of your notes and help to cut them down even further. The section to the left of the page, section 1, can be used to write down important keywords like names and dates and other essential ideas as part of the lecture. So using the Cornell method to take notes is pretty straightforward and can be adapted in various ways to fit your own preference. It can be also helpful for studying and testing yourself at a later date. One way to do this is to use the left-hand area to write questions that correspond to the right side of the page. You can then test yourself by covering the right side of the page and attempting to answer the questions, slowly revealing your notes or answers on the right side as you go. You can also test yourself by just attempting to recite the summary at the bottom of the page. So you can see that the Cornell system actually helps you long term, not only when you're taking notes in class, but down the road when you have to prepare for an exam. The square method is another strategy to help you improve your note-taking. To do this, simply reserve a small area of the page that you're writing your notes on. And in this area or square, you can write up the most important information that was presented in the lecture. Now, this is a similar principle to the Cornell method, but only a bit simpler. So you can put a square at the top or bottom of the page, then you can write your conventional notes around it. Now, during the lecture, and if you have time, fill in the box with the most important ideas or concepts. Or perhaps as a form of study at a later date, you can review the page of notes and put into the square the most important elements. Again, this critical note box will force you to actively listen to your professor so that you can identify important ideas and concepts that belong in this area. So keep in mind, it's very important to consider how you will take notes. Developing a consistent structure as to how you will take notes is very important. Structuring information improves your ability to organize, learn, and recall information at a later date. Now, if someone were to ask you, where in your notes can you find, well, this shouldn't take you too long. Your notes should be organized in a way that finding information is quick and efficient. When it comes to taking notes in university, you have to consider certain technology and software that can help to improve your note-taking. Now, for a number of students, using a laptop to take notes has a number of benefits. It's easier to store notes and access them later on a laptop, as well as having the ability to easily access the internet and other resources. If your handwriting is not the best or you struggle to write quickly with a pen, of course typing can be a preferable alternative. So if you're using a laptop or something similar, these tips will help you to improve your note-taking skills. First thing to keep in mind is that typing quickly and accurately matters. Now this may sound really simple, but the faster you can type, the more complete your notes can be. A search on YouTube will quickly reveal some helpful videos that can help you with this, especially if your keyboard typing speed isn't where you want it to be. Now remember that typing your notes during a lecture is a lot different than sending a text or writing a quick email. You will need to know where and how to find the functions of your word processor you are using, so your notes on your laptop aren't one long run-on sentence. Now using programs like OneNote or Evernote are excellent for taking notes on a computer. It makes archiving your notes easier, and you can easily mark certain pages with tags. Also, OneNote can help you plan for a project or for other elements of your course as a whole. Now here's another tip. If possible, choose a laptop with a whisper quiet keyboard. Disturbing your classmates or roommates with a loud keyboard might distract others and make it difficult for your classmate or roommate to focus. And lastly, always be sure to back up your work. It goes without saying that regularly saving and backing up your work is essential. If everything is on your laptop, it can be all too easy for a spilt cup of coffee to undo many hours of hard work. It's also very simple nowadays to back up your work. Using the Microsoft OneDrive as part of the Office 365 suite is free, and you can access your notes from anywhere in the world. Many students make the mistake by thinking that once they have taken notes, it is unnecessary to review them until it's time for the exam. They file them away, or sometimes just stick them in their school bag, thinking nothing more of them until the exam date draws near. Now this is simply not good note-taking practice. Note-taking does not end when the class is over. It's important to reread your notes, ideally on the same day that you took them. Once you have reread them, you may need to revise or rewrite some portions of your notes to create a neater version. This is important because there is a risk that when you put your notes away and don't return to them until exam time, you may be unclear as to the meaning of your notes and abbreviations. Again, revising them later in the day or the next day will ensure that you have accurate, high-quality notes that you can study from at a later date, and that you never get stuck with incomprehensible information when you really need it. In addition, going over your notes is a great form of studying. This will strengthen the information in your mind, removing the need for a hard study at a later date. This will seem like a lot of work at first, but over time it will become second nature and you will save yourself a lot of time overall. Lastly, if you receive any handouts as part of the lecture, make sure you attach them or file them away with the notes that you took. I hope you learned a few things in this presentation that will help you to more effectively record notes. Let's take a quick moment to review some of the important ideas we looked at in this presentation. The first is to be prepared for your lectures. Read ahead and know what topics will be taught, so that you can identify the most important information for you to learn. Again, this will help you to listen more actively while taking notes, so that you can use strategies to make everything that you are writing down as meaningful as possible. It's equally as important to review your notes after class. You can do this by reciting them aloud to make them more memorable. Now, this may seem awkward, but this practice can help to dramatically bring to life the information you are trying to learn. It's also important to reduce the volume of information that you are recording in your notes. Use abbreviations and short forms to help with this. Again, use anything but a full sentence. This just takes too much time. Next, be sure to date and title all of your work in order to make filing it much easier later on. Also, if the pages get separated from your other notes, you can instantly then recognize what part of the course the work is from. And lastly, always ensure that you have a complete set of notes for your course. If you're sick or can't attend a class for any reason, ask your friends for a copy of their notes, or you can also email the professor to ask as well. Thank you for watching this presentation. To learn more about the Learning Development and Success team, feel free to email us at learning.uwo.ca. You can also call us at 519-661-2183. Also, feel free to visit our website to learn how to book appointments or access our PAL Center for course-specific support. So thanks again for watching this presentation, and I wish all of you the best of luck.